I hate to give attention to this guy because he's so out of touch, but I know that people read this stuff and I see these sentiments echoed, in conversations around the place and on social media and things like that. And it's just so difficult for me to sit by and not respond in some way. Went to get lunch today, and Andrew Bolt has written 2 columns in the Herald Sun. Awesome. Shut the gate to halt local jihadists and give me high fives, not your sympathy, are the titles of these 2 articles. And I just want to address a couple of mistruths in here and things that are inflammatory and unnecessarily inflammatory regarding the content of what he's writing about. Essentially, in response to a tragic incident that happened in Brighton here in Melbourne a few days ago, which is only 2 suburbs over from where I'm sitting right now, a man was killed and there was a hostage situation, and then the culprit was also killed by police in the altercation. And so this is making the argument that we should now essentially ban any intake of Muslims, because obviously every Muslim now is a terrorist or something like that. It says here that it makes 4 terrorist attacks in a row here by Muslim refugees. 4 terrorist attacks in a row is terrible. We don't want terrorist attacks. But if we can only attribute any act of violence that's perpetrated by anybody who is a Muslim as a terrorist attack, then of course the last 4 terrorist attacks are going to be perpetrated by Muslims, because attacks that aren't done by Muslims aren't considered terrorist attacks. Not that long ago, we had an incident in Burke Street Mall where a man drove through crowded streets and ran over people and tragically killed people, not labelled a terrorist incident because he's not a Muslim. So if we can only attribute acts of violence that Muslims perpetrate as terrorism, of course all the terrorist acts are going to be done by Muslims. But it's not the only acts of violence. It's far from the only acts of violence. He goes on to say, please ignore the politicians' spin that they now vet our refugees more carefully. How can they vet refugees' children, some of whom seem even more likely to turn to jihad? How can they vet any children? How do you vet children? How do you vet children that are born here? How do you vet citizens that are born here? You can't. All you can do is improve the environment that they're born into. So here in Australia, when we have children here, when we have grown-ups here, when we have children of Australians, children of refugees, what we need to do is take every effort to improve their circumstances and improve their situation to a point where they understand how to treat each other and that they have opportunities to do other things and not get lost, to treat them for things like drug and alcohol addiction, for mental health issues that often lead to these kinds of acts of violence. That's what we need to do. You don't have to vet children, you have to provide an environment for them to thrive in and make sure that they have the support and the help and the love that they need to become fully functioning, positive members of society. Just like we should do for your children if you've got them. I mean, I don't know if you've got them or not, but whatever. Certainly I do think that there is something to be said for children having bad influences in their life and children being taught the wrong way to deal with things. Which brings me to the second column. Give me your high fives, not your sympathy. So he's talking about a cost benefit here to leaving people in war zones, refugees who cannot go back to their country, can't live where they are, people with no homes, people in war-torn countries, no education, limited access to resources, food, support. And in the next column, complains that the Melbourne launch of my book, Worth Fighting For, had to be cancelled after police warned of a serious security risk, saying they could only spare us 2 or 3 officers. Who's paying for those officers for the launch of your personal books? How is that a sensible use of taxpayer money? I wouldn't want to see 1 cent of taxpayer money going towards your book, spewing out this ridiculous rhetoric about how terrible Muslims are. So 1 cop for 1 minute is too much as far as I'm concerned. I would much rather invest the money in bringing people over here or supporting communities here of people that otherwise haven't had the fortunate start to their life that we have. Now, at a book launch or a book review or a book reading, someone squirted, or a couple of someones, squirted glitter at Andrew Bolt. Okay, you got squirted with glitter, and you know what? That's not nice. It's not nice to squirt people with glitter. But you don't want anyone's sympathy. It says, give me your high fives, not your sympathy. And let's discuss what you're looking for with a high five. I hit the head of one so hard that my knuckles are still tender. And when he was down, legs sprawled apart, I kicked. Post that footage, moron. I plead self-defense. So kicking someone on the ground who you've just hit is self-defense. So the answer to getting squirted with glitter is to retaliate with violence at the absolute utmost of what you're capable of doing in that moment, which is, to try and punch someone as hard as you can. That's the measure of a real man. That's the thing that you need a high five for. That's a really productive way to deal with that situation. That's the way to deal with it. While in this column, you're busy making pariahs of anybody who is a Muslim just because some people have been violent offenders and have done terrible things. And in the next column, you're advocating that you're a really big man because you threw a punch and your knuckles still hurt. And then you kicked that guy when he was on the ground. And you know what? They should post footage of how tough you are. Are you serious? Are you serious? Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the actual facts. Let's look at the ramifications of your personal beliefs that punching someone in the head as hard as you can until your knuckles hurt and kicking them when they're on the ground is something to be high-fived. One woman a week, on average, is killed by her partner. One woman every week. Unrelated to terrorism, I know it doesn't really suit your whinginess, but that's happening right now. People who are justifying using their fists as a means to settle arguments or make themselves feel better. From 2005 to 2012, there were 20 cases of death by coward punch. 20 people killed by coward punches. 20 people killed by other people who were trying to hit them so hard their knuckles would hurt a few days later. There are 155 cases of sucker punches that didn't result in death. And 98% of those attacks were perpetrated by men. Men who might pick up the paper and read about this hero who thinks that punching someone so hard their knuckles hurt a few days later, that's the way to go about solving your problems. Because when someone squirts you with glitter, the appropriate use of force back is to punch someone as hard as you can, punch someone else as hard as you can, and when someone's on the ground, kick them. 1 in 3 women has experienced violence in their life after the age of 15. 1 in 3. 33% of women who have to deal with the fact that there are men walking around talking about how tough they are because they punch someone so hard their knuckles hurt a few days later and that they kick them when they're down. Andrew Bolt, you're disgusting. The fact that you cannot see the irony in you promoting your own violent retaliation while at the same time condemning the acts of some mentally ill people who have gone through extreme difficulty in their life, far worse than getting squirted with glitter, is absolutely beyond me. And I pity anyone that reads your articles and takes them on board, because it is to the detriment of everyone that anybody shares that opinion. It is absolutely out of touch and inappropriate, and I am so annoyed that I read that today. So, to everyone else, don't take your advice from this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a big hero. It's great, great work. Show the footage of you punching a few people and how tough that is, while at the same time condemning, other people who are glorifying violence in the name of whatever stupid other cause they have. You can champion your violent acts, but anyone championing any other cause with violent acts is clearly wrong. Anyway, disgusting. Just be nice. It's not that hard.